All right, so now that we have finished drawing out the walls, and let's pause for a second and admire our work. So we'll turn off the sketches and zoom out. Control or Command 0 fills it to the page, and then you can admire some of your handiwork so far and see how this is coming together. Okay, so now that we've finished that, we are going to work on adding some detail. So I'm going to turn the sketches back on. We're going to zoom in here so we can look at the detail. And we need to start adding in our symbols and using our brushes. So I'm going to open those up. So we'll go to Window and then down to Brushes. And here in this panel and then in the Symbols panel, you're only going to see the brushes that are actively being used in your document. So these are ones that may have come in when we imported or we copied and pasted data from the one map to the other. So I can remove those if I want to use my other library, or I can continue to use those that were pulled in. I think I'm going to start from scratch. So I'm going to go ahead and delete these symbols. So I'll select them. To select multiple, you can either hold the Command or the Control key down and select one at a time, or you can click the first, hold the Shift key down, go to the last, and it'll select all those. Then hit Delete. It'll say, do you want to delete those symbols? Yes. It may give you a warning to say that it's also going to delete instances of those symbols that have been placed here. If that's the case, then it's up to you. If you hit yes, it'll delete all instances of the symbol that have been used in your document. Or you can sort of separate that connection when you delete those. So that's an option as well. We'll go into brushes too. We got a brush here. I'm going to click on that one and hit delete to get rid of it. Like I said, you don't have to do this. I'm just choosing to do it so I can start from scratch and sort of show you how this works. Okay, so now that I've got those cleared out, let's pull up our other brushes and symbols that we'd created earlier. Oh, and I'm going to show you too. So between this video and the last video, I updated some of the symbols. So I just wanted to show you some of those updates that happened. So we'll go to File, open the Master Library. So a couple of the updates that I made, you'll notice that before the rocks were like black and gray, and I figured out a way to make them, in my mind, a little bit better. I also found that when I had imported the ledge brushes, the domes and ceiling ledges brush, and the bedrock brush, that it was having some real issues. And part of the problem was that I had a long, like right now I've got, if I zoom in here real close, I've only got 3 little notches on this line for the ledges before I had a big long line. And it was trying to integrate that when I was drawing a really small little pit. And so I figured out that I needed to make that shorter. I could probably even go shorter than that if I wanted to and just make it one little notch at a time. But I left it at 3 notches. So just keep that in mind when you're designing your own, that you don't have to draw a massive long segment. In fact, if you do, it'll probably create more problems than it'll solve. So I really only need 1, added 3. Did the same thing over here on the ceiling domes and ledges, and then recreated the brush. And then with the bedrock, it was one long line. I split it. I used the scissor tool, which is over here under the eraser. So there's the scissor tool, and then I just snipped the line. I don't need that right now. Snipped it, and I made sure that I snipped it with, so I'll show you what I did real quick. So I took a line like this and made sure that it touched the line here and right there, because when this flows from one to the next, it's going to start, when this ends, it's going to start over here, and it needs to align perfectly. So I did that, and then the other thing that I did was I reduced the silt and the pebbles and rocks. And before, I think in the previous video, I talked about how you could use these to build out a scatter brush, but there's actually a better way, and I'd forgotten about this, so I'm going to tell you right now. So what you can do is create swatches that will fill an object with this pattern. And same thing over here. And also same thing down here. So not only did I shrink this down because I didn't need all that whole big giant mass of silt and the pebbles, but I also built out a swatch here that I could use to fill these shapes over here. So instead of solid gray now, it fills with these lines. So I'll show you really quickly how to do that, just so that you know in case you want to build your own. So oops, let's zoom in just a little bit. Yeah, and then this is the same as well. So let me show you the principle of building a swatch and how it works and some things to be aware of. Okay, so let's go over to swatches here. This is going to show all your color swatches. To create a swatch, you're going to draw something. So what I've done here, let me just show you what I've done so you can be aware of it. All these are is a bunch of lines. So I used this line segment tool right there and held the shift key down and drew a line and then duplicated it multiple times to create several lines, changed or varied the thickness. So some of these are 0.75, some are 0.5, and some are 0.25. And I tried to spread them out so that they're sort of randomly spread out. And then once I did that, I also added this box behind them that is filled with white. So it's got a white fill to it. I'm not sure why it's not showing over here. Probably because I've already generated a swatch with it. But if I were to delete this swatch, I think it would delete the fill over here. So I'm not deleting that one. But anyway, I've got that there because otherwise it would be transparent, which means if this fill was transparent and I took this rock and moved it on top of the other one, then I would see these lines from the rock behind it going through there. So that's why I added a white fill behind it. Once you've done that, all you need to do is select all those shapes and grab them over here and drop it, and now you've created a new swatch. So let's do the same thing with the ice in the water. I'm going to grab this one. I made this one specifically for the long cold cave map because there is some stratified ice, and I thought this would be kind of a cool way to show that. So this is just a bunch of rectangles colored different shades of blue. I'm going to grab those, select them like that, grab this, drag it over, drop it. I've created a swatch. And then we'll grab the last one. This is for water. So we'll drag this over, drop it. And let's see, did I have any others? I think that might have been the only ones. Yep. So let me show you now how to apply these. So I'm going to use just a basic rectangle tool. I'm going to draw out a shape here. Right now the fill is blue, like a cyanish, light blue color. Over here it represents the fill. And it shows me also in the swatches what the fill is. But if I were to click on one of these new pattern swatches I've created, for example, the stratified ice, click on that, now it's filled with that. So that's how you use swatches. Pretty straightforward. I can change that by clicking on this, or I can use this one, which is slightly different. And there we go. So that's how you can use swatches. Now let me show you something. This is something you really need to be aware of if you're using swatches, pattern swatches to fill. Watch what happens when I rotate this shape. Notice that the shape is rotating, but the fill is not. And that could be a real problem, right? If you build a whole bunch of rocks and then you rotate it vertically, all of a sudden your lines, which should be this direction, are facing vertically with the vertical rock, and then it's just like a bunch of lines going this direction. So then it looks really weird. So the way to fix that, I'm going to undo, and I'm going to go to Illustrator, Settings, General, and then I'll make sure that this box is checked. Transform pattern tiles. Check that. Hit OK. And now when we come back and I click on this and I rotate it, notice now that that pattern rotates with it. So that's something you need to be aware of. The other thing that I'll show you in terms of adding these pattern swatches for doing fill. So let's say that I'm going to use a pattern swatch to add pebbles and rocks. So we'll grab this. I'm going to convert this. I'm just going to drag it up there, drop it. There we go. And now instead of using the rectangle tool, I'm going to use what we're familiar with now, the pencil tool, and I'm going to draw an irregular shape because maybe there's a pattern in the floor, a section in the floor that's like this on the cave map. Let's complete that. Come on, there we go. That needs to be filled with rocks. So I got that. We're going to make sure that the fill is active, not the stroke, because these pattern swatches will work on the stroke as well. So if you ever click on a pattern swatch and you're like, what? Nothing happened. Well, it happened. It just applied to the stroke. So that's why you're getting that, why it doesn't seem to be applying. So let's revert that. I'm going to make sure that we've got the fill selected. Come up here, choose that, and there we go. So now you have filled this area with pebbles. Now, one thing that might look kind of weird because in the cave, usually you're not going to have a black border around it. Usually you're going to have no border. So let's fill that. Oops. Select the shape. No border. And then you look at this on the map and it's like, oh, you've got a bunch that are like sliced in half. Like, I don't want that. So to fix that, you'll just come in, select the object. I'm going to zoom in here. Whoa, not that far. Okay, let's try that again. Spacebar first, then Command. Okay, so what I'm going to do after I've applied it is just do a little bit of tidy up. So I can just continue drawing on the line there, and we'll exclude that part. For this one, maybe I want that big rock, so I'll do that. Got to go a little more. There we go. Now we've captured that rock. I can move down over here, and we'll grab some of this. And anyway, you just sort of trim off these rocks. You can either include them or exclude them by adjusting your line here. And then that will bring those in. So that's how you can go through and tidy that up. And you'll notice now, let's see, I'll do a little bit more tidy up here. I'm just gonna exclude stuff because that's probably a little easier. Come on. Catch the line, catch the line. There we go. And we'll get these last little bits. Okay, so now I'm going to click off of it, and for the most part now, it doesn't look like there are any boulders or rocks cut in half. So that's how you can do a little bit of tidy up, and you don't have to sit there and draw every one of these little boulders. The other nice thing about this swatch in particular, because there's no white background behind it like there is over here on these lines, is I can do a little bit of overlap to add more pebbles to my illustration. So to do that, I could just grab this, hold the Alt key down, and drag it up just a little bit. And there I go. Now I've got a little more density there. And if I've set this setting right here in the general category to rotate these, then I can also do a little bit of rotation. So I could rotate that around, drag one on top of the other, something like that. And now it's a lot more dense in terms of boulders. So that's how you apply the pattern swatches and how you create those. One other thing that I'll say before we jump back over here and start applying this, if you were to get my symbols and brushes or someone else's, and then you go into the map that you've created, you import that library and you drag a symbol out, and you drag in a stalactite, and the stalactite is as big as the whole passage. One thing that you can do is go into, if you have the master library of all the symbols, the original drawings, you can go in, scale those down to a more reasonable size for your map. So what I would do, for example, is let's say I brought these in, and I would just copy that whole group there, come back over here, paste it, and maybe even group it together with Command G so it's easy to select, and then just see how they are. And it looks like, I don't know, maybe some of those or maybe some gigantic stalagmites. That's probably a good size. But if it was a little too big or a little too small, then I would come back here, and then maybe if this is too big, just scale it down, hold the Shift key down, scale it down, copy it, come back over here, paste it, see if that's like a little bit more reasonable. And if that looks good, I'll delete it here. Come back over here, and then I will regenerate my symbol library and my brushes library just by grabbing those symbols, dragging them over here, creating the symbols, and then saving out that library. And just so you know, the way to save out a library, I can't remember if I showed you this in the earlier video, but if you go into brushes and you've added all your brushes or your symbols, you just come up here to this little menu item, and then down here is Save Brush Library. And then it saves out as an Illustrator file with all of the brushes or all of the symbols embedded into that file. And then you just come over to the file you're working on, and you go here to Open Brush Library. We've already done that before, so you know how to do that. So anyway, that's how you can make some adjustments. I'm going to undo here because I don't really need that anymore. And yeah, I think we're all good. So I just wanted to give you a heads up on some changes that I'd made since the last video to some of the symbols here. Okay, so we are now going to save this and close that. And we're going to start working on now building the cave detail. So I'm going to come over here now to brushes, since I don't really have any cave brushes in here, and open my brush library. So let's go to open library, choose another library, and we will go to, let's see, that was here. We will open our brushes right there. Okay, there they are. You'll notice when I opened, it didn't load into here. Like I said before, this brushes library is only going to show me the brushes that are actively applied in my document, and these have not been yet. As soon as I apply them, they'll appear up here and they will stay there. So let's go ahead and open now our symbols library. So we go to symbols, and I'm going to delete these because I don't remember where they came from. Yes, delete those symbols, and we will go here and open our symbol library. Go. So now let's start applying these. What I'm going to do is just show you a handful of symbols. I'm not going to walk through me building the entire map. We'll just go through the process of how to apply these on each of the main symbols and some of the main concepts. And then at that point, we'll turn you loose to work on yours while I work on mine, and we will reconvene once I've finished wrapping up all of the symbols here on my map. Okay, so let's go ahead now and we'll start applying. I think we'll start with some ledges. So let's grab the pencil tool. Again, we're using the pencil tool because I can draw a line and then I can continue that line. Whereas with the brush, I cannot do that. I draw one stroke and then I draw another stroke, and they never really seem to connect together without some complex extra steps. So I got the pencil. Let's come down here and, well, first we need to make sure that we're on the right layer. Right now I have this layer 1. I'm not sure what layer 1 is. That's probably an accident, so I'm going to delete that layer. We're going to go to ledges and pits. That's where I want to be. So let's go ahead now. We'll draw a line. I'm going to go ahead and trace over this guy. And nothing happened. Why didn't it happen? Because I haven't applied the brush yet. So let's try this brush. That looks pretty good, except for it's in the wrong direction. So how do you fix that? Let's zoom in just a little bit here. Well, there's a couple of ways you can fix it, but the easiest way, I'm going to delete that, and instead of drawing from left to right, this time I'm going to draw from right to left and then apply that. And there we go, problem solved. I'm going to move that though just a little bit because it needs to be over there. And what I did, so just as a reminder, there are temporary keyboard shortcuts you can use, which basically, as long as you're holding the key down, it transforms whatever tool you currently have to the tool that you are temporarily using. So one of those keyboard shortcuts is the command or the control key, which temporarily turns it into the selection tool. And then there's the space bar, which turns it into the hand tool, which is really nice for moving around your map as you're going, because as soon as I let go of that, I can keep drawing. And then there's the control space bar, which is the zoom tool. So those are some temporary keyboard shortcuts that are super handy. So now let's go ahead and do this one. If I remember from before, I needed to draw from right to left for the little notches to be in the right direction. So we'll do that. Come over here. Let's get that sealed. There we go. Okay, and then we'll again apply that to it. Now it looks like it's a little bit bigger than I want it to be, so I'm going to delete it, and I'm just going to stay more within the shape. There we go. Let's try that one and see if that's a little better. That is better. Okay, now just move it up. I'm using the left and right and up and down arrows on the keyboard. And then we'll come over here, and I'm going to draw this one. Again, we're going to go from right to left. So draw that. One thing that I wish would be nice, and I think in a previous version of Illustrator it did this, but it would inherit the brush that I used last when I started to draw. So click on that, and there we go. Excellent. I think we're going to pause there on drawing these pits and ledges, and let's move on to something else. So the next thing I'm going to do is the slopes. So that is a symbol. We're going to need to go into our cave symbols here. So let's find our slope that we brought in. There it is right there. And for symbols, all I need to do is grab it, drag it, drop it. There we go. Now this one is a little bit big. So let me show you a way that you can edit this. So you could always, of course, scale it down if you want to, just by grabbing the corner and scaling it. You can hold the Shift key to constrain the proportions. Or let's say that these notches, this one and this one, are both, I just want 5 on it instead of the 7. So let me undo that. So watch this. If I double click on the symbol, that takes me into the symbol. So I can now work on the symbol. And I'm going to delete this segment. I'm going to delete this segment right there. And I'm going to grab everything and scale it down just a little bit. So let's go there. And then maybe the one other thing that I might do is add a stroke to these just to make them a little bit thicker. So let's click on that, double click there, and we will add a black stroke and see how that works. Oh, no, obviously I don't like that. That's kind of gross. So we'll just leave it as is. I guess it's fine. So once I've made those changes, I'm going to double click anywhere but the symbol, so just right there. And now that's been changed on that symbol. So we'll scale it down just a little bit. And you'll notice too that this symbol appears in my symbol library, as does the brush that I applied. So now I can grab additional instances of this symbol, and it's got 5 little notches instead of the 7 because I adjusted the 1 and it adjusted all instances of that. So I can scale this down now. Let's get that one right up in here. Maybe we'll make it just a little bigger. And if I want to match the scale, instead of having to scale each one down, I want them to be the same, then I can use the keyboard shortcut where I hold the Option or the Alt key down, and using the Move tool, I grab a symbol and drag it, and it drags out a copy. So that's another way to speed things up. So we'll add that there, and then we'll put one more right over here. And quickly rotate that. Looks like that center rotation point moved for some reason. I probably accidentally... Oh, let's see. I think I know what happened. Let's go into the symbol again. Let's select everything. Let's move this so that the intersect is right there in the middle. I think that might have done it. Let's try it and see. Yep, there we go. Okay, that's good there. Now let's go ahead and why don't we add some rocks. So we will grab our rocks here. We've got all kinds of different sizes and shapes to the rocks. So usually the ones with the thicker lines, the little icon has sort of expanded it, so it doesn't really have lines that are thicker than these. It just indicates these are small rocks and these are pretty big ones because they've had to scale them down. So I'm going to grab something that's probably in the middle. That's probably a little too big, although I can always scale it down. One of the nice things too about rocks, like I've created a whole bunch of different versions, but even with a single rock symbol, so I can take this one and scale it down, put it right there, and then I could create a duplicate of it and stretch it out, or maybe even stretch it like this, where it basically flips it, and put it over here. We'll make it small and skinny. There we go. So now it's one rock, but they look fairly different, and so you can create a lot of variation in doing that kind of thing. I'm going to delete these because I want a different rock. I'm going to try grabbing that one. That's a little better shape. And why don't we grab this one? Put it right there. And maybe this one. So I'm just grabbing out those rocks and placing them around, and then I'll grab some smaller ones and put it in there. But that's all there is to adding the rocks. And then we've got some snow here as well, and some silt. So we need to add a silt swatch. Let's see if that showed up in our swatches. Oh, it is. Good. It's still in our swatches. So the swatches, whenever I saved it back over in the master file, it saved here to sort of my master swatch library, which is fantastic. So I'm going to draw the silt here. We'll just grab, again, our pencil tool. Oh, you know what? I realize I just made a mistake, and hopefully you all caught that too. So let's collapse that layer. All of these rocks that I just put in here are all now on the ledges and pits layer. I don't want that. So I'm going to click on this one, hold the shift key down and click on that one, hold the shift key down and click on that one. And all three should be selected now. I did the same thing with the slopes. So I should have been paying more attention. But this is a good thing to learn in case you make these kind of mistakes where you get going and then you realize everything's on the wrong layer. So I've selected these. I'm going to grab that little brown square and drag it into the right layer. So those are rocks. They should be on this layer right here. So I'm just going to grab that, drag it down to rocks, and now they're on the rocks layer. So now if I turn off this rocks layer, they disappear. We'll do the same thing here with the slopes. Grab those. Those also are on ledges and pits, and it needs to be down here on slopes. So we're going to grab that, drag it down, and now those are on the slopes layer. The nice thing is once you've got at least a baseline of symbols and other objects on your cave map, if you click on them, it activates that layer. So if I wanted to add more slopes, I could just click on one slope, and now I'm working on the slopes layer, which is super nice. Okay, now let's go back over here to the silt. So I'm going to grab the pencil, make sure this time that we are on the right layer, which would be dust and dirt, or you could call it silt, whatever you want to call it. And I'm going to go ahead and draw out a shape. So, and actually I'm going to adjust because I want this station to be right aligned with that other station. So we'll unlock our layers, click right there, drag that up, lock the layer, and then make sure we're back on the dust and the dirt. Now I'm going to draw a shape where the silt needs to appear. So we'll just draw this out right about there. Okay, and I can complete it here or I can not. It doesn't really matter on this one. I'm going to clean it up so it doesn't flow outside the walls, so it doesn't cut it off there. Okay, got our shape. Now we just need to apply the pattern swatch. Make sure we've got the fill selected, and we'll click on that. And there we go. And if I wanted to, I mean, these are super tiny points, so it may not matter. Nobody's ever really going to be looking that closely. But I could go in and trim some of this out just a little bit if I wanted to. And I do want to, so I'm going to. There we go. Get rid of that guy. And bring that one back in. And that one. Oops. Looks like there's more to it. Come on. Ah, drats. Oh, now it worked when I didn't want it to work. Okay, good enough. All right, so there we go. Zoom out a little bit. So we've added our silt or debris or whatever that is. And then maybe the last thing that we'll add, let's see, it's like more rocks, more slopes, more ledges, ice. Let's add some ice. We'll do it on the profile view. So I'm going to come down over here. I'm going to draw out our shape. So we'll, I think the snow, actually I'm going to delete that. Begins, where does it begin? Stratified ice ends right there. Okay. So we'll draw this down. Oh, there's a rock sticking out of the ice. So we'll draw that over like this. I'm not going to go the whole way. We'll just do it here, just so you don't have to spend all this time watching me draw a long line. Because I can always go back in and add to it. I want to make sure that it's behind the wall. So you don't want any of the ice to come out like way over there. That would look really weird on your map. It would look like a kindergartner that can't stay in the lines. So there we go. Make sure that connects. Connected. Excellent. And then we will just go ahead and we'll apply our ice. Let's see, was this the one? Yep, that's the one, the stratified ice. Oh wait, no, that was the water. Let's see, maybe it was this. No, that was water. Okay, is that right? That doesn't seem right. Let's go back to our master library, because I thought I had some dark blue lines in there. I mean, that's not bad. I could always leave it like that, but I'm just going to check real quick here. And there's our ice and water. Yeah, it should look more like that. So we're going to grab this, drag that. Whoops, come on. There we go. Drag that one over to our library. We'll come back over here. And, oh, why did it not apply it? Okay, so it could be that it's not applying because it's not in my document. So let's figure out that problem. So we're just going to come here. We're going to Control C to copy that. Come over here, Control V to paste it. And now I'm going to drag it over to my swatches. There it is. I'll just delete this shape now and click here. And there we go. Apply. And now we've applied that swatch. So it looks like you have to create it within the document that you're working on, which is really good to know. Okay, let me just see if there's anything else here. It looks like that is just about it. So the rest of it at this point now is just going through and doing more of what I just showed you. Make sure that you're on the right layer, that you don't end up on the wrong layer, because then otherwise shuffling things around can be a pain in the rear end. Although let me show you just one quick and easy way to get around that. If you do put a whole bunch of things on the wrong layer and you don't want to have to go in and select, up here under the select, you can go to select same. So you select an object and then you say select everything with the same fill and stroke, the same fill color, the same opacity, the same stroke color, the same stroke weight. So if they've got all the same fill color or stroke color, you can hit that and it will select everything with that same color. You can also go into objects and you can say select all the text objects. And there's some other things up here. So anyway, that's a really easy way, if you've made a mistake, to be able to select everything. Just be aware, like if you're using a 1.5 point black stroke for your walls and your symbol or your object has a 1.5 black stroke, it's going to grab both the walls and the objects. So it needs to be unique in either the stroke size, the stroke weight, the stroke color, or the fill, or a combination of those. So anyway, that's a quick hack. If you make any mistakes, hopefully you don't, but go ahead and start working on your map, and I will see you as soon as I get all of this wrapped up.